Today we're going to talk about how to install the TMC 2209EZ on the Bigtree Tech Manta E3 EZ. So I need to point out a couple of things real quick here. So if you look over here, you can see that we have stepper ports. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of them. As you can see, we're probably going to use X and Y. Now, I'm probably going to use X in this case just for this. So it's going to be this stepper port. I will show you first how to use an end stop, and then I'll show you how to do sensorless end stops, meaning there is no end stop connected. So there's going to be some issues that I'm going to come across during this video that I'll point out as I come across them, because I've come to realize there may be some issues. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go over and show you on the desktop what we've got here. So if you're looking over here, you can see there's a repository for Bigtree Tech. What you can do is you can click on repositories and then type Manta, and this will bring you to the EZ board instructions. So you can download them right here, and then I've already downloaded them and extracted them, so I actually have them right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to first show you the manual's located right here, which I already have open. So what I'm going to do is actually search for the TMC 2209. So I'm going to type TMC 2209. And we'll see what we can find. So we're not finding anything. Hopefully it's not EZ TMC. So it's not there either. So we're going to scroll down and see if we can find it. So inside here you can see there's UART mode steppers. So what we can do is go to page 10, or we can try and click on this and see if we can get to it with the control button. So as you can see, they're talking about the UART and SPI. Now SPI stands for Serial Peripheral Interface, and UART I think is Universal Asynchronous something or other, but it's similar to SPI, just different wiring and software programming. So, or different logic would probably be a more precise way to say it. So we have sensorless homing, and you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 of them. So it's probably X, Y, Z, E1, E0 for the steppers. Now they probably numbered them, well in this case they said X motor. On other boards they do say motor 1 or motor 0. So keep that in mind. So I'm going to scroll up and see if we can find the other section here. So they're talking about voltages, but essentially we've got this connector here that we need to connect. So the other thing we can do is this. We can go back over to the actual browser, and we can go back and we can search, if I can get back to it here, on repositories and type TMC 2209, and it will give us hopefully the stepper that we're looking for. It might be EZ. So let's delete that for a second and see if we can find it. So we've got Bigtree Tech EZ driver. So these are the different types, and this is where you can find the manuals. So there should be one for TMC 2209 down in here. And this will tell you actually how to, well, it'll give you a schematic, but apparently there's not an actual manual in here, just the schematic. So we're not going to worry about that too much because I'm going off on a tangent, but I'll show you how to hook it up. It's not actually that difficult. So let's go over to the desktop for a second. I'm going to pick up one of these. Now keep in mind you want to use a fan on this in order to keep it cool. Now there's a bolt right here, and this one's going to face towards the power supply. So I'm going to insert it right here. Once that's inserted, I'm going to plug in the NEMA connector for the NEMA 17 stepper. Now, I'm not going to talk about power on this at the moment. This is actually written in the manual. I'm just giving you a generic configuration. So, next thing that we need to do is connect our actual end stop. And there will be issues with this. So, let's go back over to the computer for a second and see what we can see. So, down here, I've actually pulled up the pinouts. So, you can see that it's PB... It's PC4 for the X stepper. So we've got to trace this out. So if we follow this line up, it says it's right here. So it's these two pins for the X end stop. So let's go back over to the board, and we have a 2-pin end stop here. So you can see that there's a red and a black. The red's going to be signal in this case. So I'm going to connect it down in here, hopefully, and you can see how it's connected. So let's go back over to the desktop and power this up as well. So before I actually do anything, let me grab the power and connect it. Now obviously you can see down in here that I have power for the motors and power for the actual board. That's also in the diagram that I showed you a second ago, being this. So over in here, we have the DC in and then the motor power. So it's going to take a second for this to actually boot. I will tell you there will be an issue in here that I had. I don't know if you will have it. I'll show you a way to correct it. So PC5 is what we're going to use to correct it when it occurs. So there's going to be some interesting noise in a second. So let me minimize that, bring this up. Actually, I already have this open, but I'll bring it over to the dashboard. As you can see, I already have the actual connections here for the thermistors. Currently, I'm only seeing one of the two, which is fine, as long as this comes up. They also might be the exact same temperature, and that may be why you're not seeing it. So let's go over to machine. And first thing I need to point out is check for your updates. I did updates a couple of days ago, so I'm assuming they're good. But always do an update first when you're doing an upgrade. So you can click here, and these will all check for updates. So we're going to go into the printer.config. Inside here, I already have my MCU configured, which I showed in a previous video in the playlist. But our current stepper is set up for a default stepper that is unknown to us. It could be a TMC 2208, 2209. It could be a DRV 8825. We don't know. But if we scroll down a little bit further, we can see that the TMC 2209 is here. So we're going to copy that, and we're going to paste it right underneath so we can see it. So it's right here. Now I'm going to highlight this whole entire thing and hit Control / to remove the comments. Now currently you can see that the end stop is PC4. So we're going to test that real quick. Now, the current end stop we're using does not have what's known as a, pardon me for a second, a resistor pull-up, which is that little caret symbol you see right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that actually from the equation by just backspacing over it. So I'm going to save and restart. And the first thing we're going to do is test our end stop. So we'll go to the dashboard. And on the dashboard, what we'll do is we'll type M119. And let me bring it up so you can see what I'm doing here. So down below, we have the end stop right here. We're going to be testing that. So I'm going to type M119 and see what the status is. Currently it says triggered, so I'm going to then click it and do the command again. And it doesn't change. So that tells me that the pin in this particular situation is not reading. So we're going to fix that. So I'm going to go over to the machine again. I'm going to go over to the printer config, and we were using PC4. which you can see right here. So we're going to have to change that. So I'm going to go over to the desktop for a second, bring up the actual pinouts for this so we can see them. So down here on the E0 detect, this is actually for detecting if you run out of filament. In this case, we're not going to worry about it, but it's PC5 and it's over in here. So the bottom pin is your signal pin. And in this case, the bottom pin over here is not registering for PC4. So we're going to use these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and I'm going to say that this PC4 is now PC5, and I'm going to save and restart. And what I'm going to do now is very carefully go over to the desktop, extract this out, and plug it in over here. And as you can see, the bottom pin in this case is going to be the red one. And we'll go back over to the actual desktop and camera, and we'll go to our dashboard over here, and we'll do the same command first without clicking it. Now it says open, so we're going to click it down, and then we're going to do the command again, and now it says triggered. So we know it's working. So the next thing we want to do is actually home. So homing, we're going to have a new set of issues that we're going to have to take care of. So in order to home, we can't use the home all because that does all three axes or axes. So we're going to type G28X, and that will home just the X axis. So I'm going to hit enter and put my finger by the end stop to stop it and see what happens. So that worked, but now it throws an error saying no trigger on X after full movement. So what we're going to have to do is fix that. And it's a little known thing that will drive a lot of people crazy. So what we're going to have to do is add a command right here. And that command in this case will be called, hang on a second, let me pull it up here. It'll be homing underscore retract underscore dist and then :0. So now you can see that command. So we're going to hit save and restart. Hopefully I can recenter the axis here. And we're going to do this again and see if the error goes away. So let's go back over to the dashboard, up arrow on the command that we just had, and try this a second time. So now the error is gone. So we fixed that. We now can home with an actual end stop. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm actually going to disconnect the end stop. So I'm going to have to power this down and make some mods where we actually add the jumper. So let's power this down and go over to the actual desktop for the board. Okay, I just disconnected the power. So I'm going to remove this, and we're going to have to add the jumper. Now the jumper in this case is going to be the first one on top. For some reason they didn't do them by the actual steppers, which makes it very confusing. So it is located right here, and then you have your y-axis down here. Then over here you have your z-axis. Then I believe it's E1, and then E2 is someplace in here, right there. So now that we know that, we're going to power it back up. This is going to take a moment. And we're going to have to make a modification inside of the actual firmware again. So I'm going to center the axis while this is going on. Then we'll go back over to the actual desktop. On the desktop, it may take a second to actually refresh, so I'm going to hit refresh and see if it's coming up. And the reason that I'm doing this is it takes about 30 seconds with the eMMC type control for memory. Let me point it out here real quick. This board has eMMC on it, so it boots a little bit quicker. You don't need a drive. So we're now up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back over to the machine, then go to printer config. And in this case, we're not using PC5 anymore. We're going to be using, hopefully, the diag pin, if it works. So I'm going to do Control / to remove the comment. Then we have to make this virtual. So to make this virtual, it's going to take me a second here. I just have to grab the command because I don't want to type it out. It's rather long, but I'll explain it. So over in here, I'm going to highlight this and paste TMC 2209 _ stepper _ X : virtual stepper. So what we're saying is point to this in the first portion of it right here. And then we're saying go to the virtual end stop, which is going to be this right here. Now, I didn't tell you before, we're in actual Stealth Chop mode. If you wanted to make this spread cycle, you would change the 6 9s to a single 1. Now, I don't want to do spread cycle because I'm not a fan of it, but it would look like that. So, I'm going to save and restart, and hopefully this will work. I am not sure. This probably worked when I tested it on the y-axis, so let's see what happens. So let's go over to the dashboard. Let me make this so it's actually more visible for you to see. And we're going to do the exact same command we did of G28X. Now, there is something that's going to happen that's going to go wrong, and I'm doing this by design. So you're going to hear a grinding noise, but normally if you set this up right, you will not. So it's going to home, and it's going to grind. And so I'm going to hit emergency stop. I'm then going to go over to machine, printer config, and what's happening is there's a command missing in here for the actual sensitivity. So I'm going to add that in, and that command is actually called driver _ strength, and it's abbreviated, so you'll see what I mean in a second. Let me just paste this in here. So essentially what's occurring here is there's a driver strength that you need to set for it to detect that it's reached the end of an access. So it shows sensitivity that causes a overcurrent that then sends to the signal pin saying you've reached the end of the access, thus tripping the signal. So I'm going to save and restart. And what I'm going to have to do now is when this comes back up, I'm going to have to center the axis so you can see this. And I'm then going to do the G28 again, space X, and we're going to home the axis and see if it detects. Now this may or may not work because last time I tested this was on the y-axis, so let's see what happens. So it barely moved. So we got to figure out why that is. So I'm going to type M119 and hopefully we'll have a clue. So it says it's open. So there's something weird going on with the actual sensitivity. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try G28 again with an X and see if we can detect it. So it worked that time, so maybe something was happening. So let's try moving this axis out and seeing if we can play with it a little here. And let's try homing again. So apparently it may have taken a second to load, but it appears to be fine now. So at this point, I want to take a moment to thank everyone for taking the time to watch. Also my patrons, I'll put a thank you note at the end of the actual video. And I also have to acknowledge that Big Tree Tech did provide the Manta E3EZ. So everyone take care, be safe, and I'll talk to you later.